Alright guys, welcome back to Reviewers Assemble, our MCU and review show. My name is Kyle, I'm your host as always, joined once again by my friend Victor. I think I've introduced for the first time this time, and then Garrett. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't seen the other videos, please go check out Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, and The Incredible Hulk. Good times. We are going to try and aim for a shorter product because we know a lot of you guys don't have the time to watch an hour and 10-minute video, which I know Iron Man 2 was, but that is a good, I think we did.
It was worth it.
I think we did some good editing on there, so if you can, please check that out. But yeah, so this is going to be a little bit of a different format. We're going to spend less time on kind of the overall recap. We assume that you guys have seen this movie before, so we just got done watching Thor, so we're going to be reviewing Thor today, but we're going to touch on kind of the big points and then just kind of our overall impressions of it. So I guess we'll just start off with kind of initial thoughts. I think is going to be sort of the new format here. So what do you guys think of the movie Thor, the original Thor?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I'll lay it out a little bit, so if you haven't seen Thor, obviously, go watch it. I'm assuming most of you are watching this because you have seen Thor, but if you haven't, Thor is essentially a god from a different planet, so we're on movie 4 of the universe. And this is the first time we're really being introduced to a different realm or a different planet, which is really cool. So it's taken the sci-fi or the outside of the box thinking to a whole different world. It's a different realm. So we're going to be introduced to new things here, new powers. Obviously, with Hulk, he had the gamma radiation, and there's some science in that. We're going to see more of it in the future with Captain America and things like that. But this is full-blown, out of the world, completely new stuff to, anything that you're used to. So it's sort of a different, exciting, kind of intense feel to it. And it's all so new. And for me, I never read or really knew what Thor was until I saw this. Like, I didn't read the comic books or things like that. So I really was going into this completely open-minded the first time I saw it. And it came out pretty good. It's a good movie overall. So, I mean, for you guys, what are some of your favorite parts of this movie?
I think off the bat for me, the first scene that really stood out for me rewatching this movie, and this is a 2011 movie, so it's a little dated at this point, 9 years old, but when Odin banishes Thor, for me, that was a really cool scene where he takes his power away and he speaks to the hammer and says, whoever should hold this hammer, let him be worthy. But it's cool because he kind of blasts Thor off and his armor goes away, and Thor's basically he doesn't turn into a human per se, but he's lost all his godly powers.
No, I mean, I think he ends up mortal.
Is he? Yeah, he's mortal. I mean, obviously he doesn't die in this movie, but I don't know if it's touched on that if he can die or if he's.
It seemed like he was going in that direction.
Yeah, but I thought that was a really cool scene. The effects were cool, and I thought, and then Odin throws the hammer in there. The one part I didn't like about that is that the Mjolnir ends up on Earth with Thor, and I don't know if he I guess the question for you guys, did Odin mean to throw Mjolnir with Thor onto Earth so that he can be worthy to regain it at the end, or was he? To me, I thought he was just throwing it into the warp or whatever, to end up whoever's worthy will wield this. But now I'm thinking in my head, maybe he threw it because he knew Thor was worthy. He just hadn't earned it yet.
Kind of a character test.
Yeah.
If you one day can figure out what you need to be to rule this world of Asgard, we'll give you your powers back. Kind of incentive. But yeah, I think that's what it was, more than I'm just going to chuck it into this black hole or Bifrost, whatever it is, and send it to wherever in the galaxy.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite scenes or a scene?
My favorite scenes, just because it's probably the only time you really his arrogance is known throughout the MCU.
Especially in this movie.
In the very beginning of this movie, I'm trying to blank on the world that they go to, and they open up the door.
Jotunheim.
And he disobeys everybody, and it's you know what? We have what it takes. We're gonna go there with just 5 of us, and we're single-handedly gonna take on all of Jotunheim. And then he gets there and quickly realizes, yeah, this was a bad idea. Even though he's beating up everybody, it's still you see like his arrogance clouds his judgment, and that's going to be a huge problem for Thor.
The king actually talks him out of fighting.
Odin saves their ass there.
Well, but in Jotunheim, the king talks him out of fighting, and he's like, and Loki and all the guys are like,
But then the
let's
king
just go
calls
home.
him like a
They start-
bitch.
Yeah, the king
start
calls
to
him
turn
Little
around.
princess.
and they're gonna walk away, and Thor hears something, he stops walking.
Calls him
and
like a princess or something, and that's when Thor's like, oh, it's on.
Yeah, and Loki says something, he's like, oh shit, you shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
And Thor turns around and it's game time. That scene is actually awesome.
But speaking to Garrett's point, like Thor's arrogance here is like on display throughout the first 90% of this movie, because they actually go to leave and they're like, Thor, we need to go, and he's the one who's like still beating everyone up, and he's like, all right, he says like, then go.
Yeah, you guys leave.
Yeah, he's like, peace out then. But even though like really cool like little bit that we missed before, Heimdall, played by Idris Elba, he says before they go to Jotunheim, he says, just so you know, if you endanger Asgard, like I'm not gonna open the door for you.
Yeah.
So like, and he tells them that, like very obvious foreshadowing, but like he tells them that before they go, and then like they're like, Thor, we gotta go, and he keeps fighting them. And they're trying to get Heimdall to open up the door. It's like, dude, he's not gonna open the door up because you're still fighting, and all the frost giants are gonna come at them. Yeah, I mean, Vic, I don't know if you want to touch on one of your favorite scenes. I know we don't want to spend too much time on the plot recap or specific scenes.
You know, I don't particularly have a favorite scene. I actually love the development of Thor in this. I love watching him kind of go from, the arrogant, asshole, cocky, I can beat up everybody, and he slowly humbles. And I think Odin did a great job by humbling him and letting him kind of realize
He's not ready.
Yeah, who he isn't without the powers. Or who he is without the powers. Sorry. So, a great scene is when he finally fights his way through to get his hammer. And he can't lift the hammer because he's not worthy.
At the science facility, or
because it's sitting in the ground and they set up the whole grounds around it. That part was awesome because I really think that's what hit home for him, and that's what really humbled him up. And then Dr. Selvage saves him, gets him out of lockup, and they get drunk together. But I love that scene because that really was kind of transformative for Thor in this movie as a character. It really humbled him up and realized, like, shit, I'm a human right now. And I'm not Thor, I'm not a god anymore.
I think there's a line where he says, like, this is the first time in my life I don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not the future king of Asgard, I can't go home.
Everything's been stripped away from him.
Yeah.
And he was expecting to just go to that facility and pick that hammer, because, like, he's riding with Jane, played by Natalie Portman, and, like, he's, like, all cocky. She's like, who are you? And he's like, you'll see soon.
Yeah.
And, like, he just thinks he's going to go and pick up his hammer and, like, take what's belonged to him. Because there's, like, that scene in the bar where the guy tells him, like, 50 miles west.
Which satellite?
I think probably universally, at least one of my favorite scenes is, just reminded me of it, is the scene with all the truckers and, like, all the big dudes, and they're
Trying to rip the hammer.
they're trying to get the hammer. Stan Lee makes a cameo where he's driving the truck and the truck bed comes off, and he's like, did it work? No.
I love when he leaves the lab or whatever with Selvage and Jane, and he walks into a small little pet store and goes, I need a horse.
I need a horse. We don't have those here.
We got bunnies and cats.
Give me something big enough I can ride one. It's like, yeah, that was a really good bit. I noticed that too, watching that.
Low key funny.
Yeah, Loki, a good pun there.
Yeah, right.
Loki, we'll touch on a little bit. Tom Hiddleston, I think.
Yeah.
It's weird. He looks like a baby in this movie. It's weird to see him like in the first Thor movie, because this is his introduction. I think Loki kind of plays like a side character almost in this movie, but he does kind of eventually take over Asgard when Odin. We find out eventually, just really quick touching on this, like Loki is actually like a frost giant baby, which is, I thought was kind of weird. Did you guys think that was kind of a weird plot twist? Or
Yeah, no, it throws you off a little bit, and I guess if we're gonna talk about like one of two of my favorite parts about this whole movie is until closer to the middle or end, you really don't know who the bad guy is.
No.
Is it the Frost Giants in Jotunheim? Kind of, but not really. They went in there and kicked their ass, and it was over with pretty quickly. But you find out quickly that it's Loki. But Loki really, at the end, shows that he doesn't have completely bad intentions. He's like looking for love and affection at the same time. So I love that aspect. And I just shot off track a little bit. I don't know what you asked us. About Loki, yeah. I mean, and it kind of makes sense because his issues with his separation is that he's the adopted son, he's the adopted brother, and even though
he's like, you want a frost giant on the throne? That's like right when Odin plays with Anthony Hopkins, he has like his heart attack or whatever.
Yeah.
Goes into like a coma basically.
Yeah. So I mean, with Loki the whole time, and it's funny because that's who his character is supposed to be. You're never like onto what he's doing.
You're never sure. He's always like tricking the audience and and that's kind of his character.
And he's so good at it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like Mysterio and like Spider-Man, where it's like he's always got something up his sleeve.
Yeah, there's some sort of acting the whole way through.
Yeah,
I forget who it is, but someone in the movie refers to him as like a magician, and they call him. They're like, "Oh, he's a magician. Like what you see is not what you're gonna get. Like he's very good at illusions and hiding who he truly is." And I forget who it was. I think it might have been the girl that's in that like Thor's crew there at the beginning. Yeah, and that really kind of sums up who he is. He's just kind of a mystery, and
he's like a con man.
He's smart. He doesn't show his hand. He always is like 2 steps ahead and kind of uses people's plans against them. It works out in his favor in this movie, but like even when he takes over and you start to get kind of a bad vibe from him, all of his answers, like, oh, this is why we can't go back to get Thor. He's like, I can't be the person that undoes the last king's last like act while they were on the throne. We can't jeopardize Asgard by going to get Thor. He gives you good reasons for why he's not doing that, and so you don't think like, oh, he's out to get Thor. You think like he's just trying to be the best king he can be because that's the new position he found himself in.
Honestly, and we gotta look up what it is, as we were talking about it earlier. I hate the little fight scene down in the little New Mexico town with that metal guy.
So the end scene, basically.
Yeah,
it's not a good.
I don't know why I find that part a little cheesy. I actually find the whole Earth part a little cheesy. But that particular scene, it's like his Goonies, who I actually kind of like his best friends, are these badass warriors when they're up in Jotunheim. Like, they're kicking hundreds or dozens of these frost giants' asses with Thor's, support. But they go down here and they have literally like zero chance against this thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of pisses me off because then Thor, like, explodes him one time with like the hammer magic, whatever, towards the end, and he's done for. Like, I don't know, that scene just pissed me off.
Once he gets his power back.
Yeah, I don't know. That scene was just cheesy, and then that and the development of the Jane and Thor's relationship in that scene, it's like, yeah, he's attractive, she's attractive, naturally they kind of clinged, but other than having like goo eyes for each other the whole time, they never really developed any sort of relationship or chemistry. And when she saw him get hit or backhanded by that, and she was like, oh my god, and she's running, like, come on, like,
yeah,
I get it, you care about him, but you act like your husband of 20 years just...
If anything, I thought Jane was more into Thor than Thor was into her.
Oh, I agree, for
like,
sure.
It almost seemed to me like watching this movie, like Natalie Portman was really more interested to me as in Chris Hemsworth, the actor, as like
right,
like than their characters were. Because yeah, like we said, there was a funny like bit throughout the movie where like she hits him with the car in the beginning scene, and then like he like breaks out of the hospital bearings like somehow he like, I don't know if you guys remember, but like he's like restrained, but then he like somehow just like wiggles his arm free and he gets out of the hospital and they're like, where's Thor? And then she backs up over him and she's like, I don't mean to keep doing this on purpose. And that was like a funny bit. Also really quick before I forget, the great scene I liked where they're in like the diner and he's like, this drink is great. He's like, I'll have another, and he smashes it. She's like, why'd you break it? You could have asked for another one. He's like, it was delicious. The least favorite scene, I really hated the Coulson scene where he goes to get the hammer and the guy from Chernobyl that Garrett and I were talking about, the guy who says the Ronkins, I know you haven't seen Chernobyl, but Sveg, whatever the guy's name is in the beginning, the scientist, he goes, Thor is like captive by them, and then he's just like, oh, he's a doctor. And then Coulson is like, oh, he's a doctor, because they have like a fake ID or whatever. And they're like, oh, that's funny because it says he. It's like such a weird scene where I hate Coulson throughout this whole movie, and I love Coulson usually.
Yeah.
He's like duped in this movie, and I feel like he's always a step behind where like he takes Jane's equipment, and then at the very end of the movie, he's like, "Oh, you can have all your equipment back." He's like, "Don't worry, you gotta keep doing research." And she's like, "Dude, I was trying to tell you that the whole movie. Like, I need that research." She's like, "I built that equipment on my own." And just like, I just thought this scene is really dumb where he goes to like, eventually tries to take the hammer out because like they go to free Thor, and Coulson's kind of like keeping him captive, and they're just like, "Oh," the guy's like, "Oh, don't worry, he's one of ours," and like I forget what he says. Oh, he just got a little drunk or something. And it's like, I just thought that whole scene was like a terrible one. And I believe the fight scene at the end I thought was stupid, and Thor becomes worthy. But those were like the two big scenes to me that stuck out where I was just like, I enjoyed this movie more than I remembered enjoying it.
It was good.
But I was just like, oh, those two scenes, I was like, dude, Coulson is like the super, like, supposed to be the super intelligent guy who's like always on top of things. We see him in Iron Man 2. Where he's like getting the better of Tony to an extent, I mean Tony one-ups him, but like we think that he's a capable dude, and then like I feel like he's just like I don't know, just that whole scene I thought was just messy.
Mine is really quick. It's part of that end scene. It's when Thor and Loki are fighting on the bridge, and then he shatters the bridge, and they're both hanging off the edge, and Odin comes and kind of grabs them and saves them.
I could have done
and
it,
then I could have done it, father. Blah blah blah. Ends up letting go and falling into a black hole. But here's why I don't like that. How many movies have had a villain fall off a cliff and like supposedly die, like kind of like Mufasa in Lion King? Like it's just how many scenes have we seen where someone's clinging to life and then they end up getting let go and falling?
Yeah,
I think it happens in like San Andreas and like 100 other movies.
You know what's funny? You know what pisses me off about that scene? And it's kind of my vice or my thing that I hate about most of these movies is these guys' powers like come and go. Thor can fly whenever he fucking wants to,
but now he can't.
Except when he can't
when
fly.
His brother's dying, he's like, "No,
he's
I'm good."
falling off a bridge.
And you can't fly. And I guess you could say he's getting sucked into the dark hole. But if you get sucked in the dark hole, you get sucked right off the bridge. So it's like, that part kind of just pissed me off in general. It's a little bit of a lapse in directing and artistic stuff.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a little cliche. It
is cliche for sure.
I just didn't. That's one part that kind of irritated me. I was like, really? Like that's how Loki's gonna disappear in this movie? He's just gonna fall.
And I did just bring up the directing. I'll kind of interject for a second. Kenneth Branagh. I'm not.
Is it a Branagh?
Kenneth Branagh. I don't know. Maybe.
Sounds familiar.
But
we're gonna have to give him a name.
First of all, love him as an actor. He's the bad guy in Jack Ryan, the Shadow Recruit. Have you seen that?
No, I've seen the Jack Ryan Amazon series with Krasinski, which is great.
I heard that's good. The movie is phenomenal. He plays the bad guy in it, Russian guy. But he's actually the director on this, and he's directed quite a few movies. And I'm pretty impressed overall because I like him. He plays like a general in a war movie too, whatever. But like
Hulk.
Yeah, right. But I wanted to give a shout out to him because considering he's got 70 movies as an actor and this is a directing movie, did a pretty good job.
The one thing I hated, and I mentioned this when we were watching it, there's a bunch of scenes where they shoot like sideways, and like I fucking hated that part. Like I don't know why they decided to do that. It's like they have the cut, but then like it's like I don't even think the scene is like sideways. It's like the characters. It's just weird where it's like they put the camera at a side angle, and it's like and it happens way too often.
I mean, it's funny because I'm always interested to see who the directors are in these movies. We know Favreau does Iron Mans and stuff like that. I wanted to see if this director got the second.
What else has he done?
Let's see. He did not direct Dark World. I know that much. So he did not do the next several movies.
There's a bullet there.
Artemis Fowl, which is coming up. Murder on the Orient Express. Cinderella in 2015, which strangely was pretty good. My fiance liked it. He directed Jack Ryan, which he also acted in. He was probably the second or third leading role in that, which is impressive. I mean, there's like 20 movies that he's directed, but those are kind of the bigger ones that I recognize. But overall, I mean, pretty good job as an actor-director. I mean, he was an actor in this, but someone who's acted a lot in the past.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think this movie was better than I remembered it. Kind of like I said earlier, but did you guys kind of agree on that, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, there's some soft parts in it that I don't love, but for the most part, for the first movie, the what do you call it? The
This is the origin of
yeah,
Thor.
yeah. So I mean, it's pretty good. The character development is good. It humbles him, shows how he gets smarter throughout the movie. So, yeah, I mean, overall, it's pretty good.
I think this is my least favorite Chris Hemsworth performance in all the Thor movies, but like, I think he's just so iconic as that character. Where I think we talked about this in one of the past reviews, where it's like, Chris Evans is always going to be Captain America, which we'll talk about next week for Captain America. But like, and Tony Stark or Robert Downey Jr. is always going to be Tony Stark. Where it's like, you think of Thor and like Chris Hemsworth is Thor, and like I think right away I was kind of watching this movie and I was like, he feels kind of like a movie star right out of the gate. And I don't think he's great in this movie. He does a good job of playing the arrogant character, but like he just fits the role where I'm like, that is Thor. Like I can't really picture anyone else.
So would you put him as the best actor in this movie?
As the strongest Avenger?
Strongest Avenger. Who you got?
Straight transition right in there.
Right.
No, I actually don't put Thor as that one.
Who you
I
got?
actually, you know what, come back to me.
This is one thing that I loved about this movie. I think the supporting cast from Hemdall, or however the hell you say it, Odin, Frida, the mother, the Goonies, Selvig, Darcy, the overall supporting cast list is phenomenal.
It's pretty good.
It like Darcy is such a dipshit intern who like she's a political science major.
She's the one from Two Broke Girls, right?
Yep. And like Selvig ends up having a big role throughout the Marvel universe, but he's great in this. Jane is pretty good. The Goonies are literally Goonies, but they're kind of funny how they're like, they remind me of like your typical military that's like cocky and like kind of like yeah let's pack a dippa and go fuck some people up. Like they're kind of funny.
See, that's where we actually disagree. Not to cut you off, Vic, but like I didn't really like the Goonies.
Their acting is terrible.
I thought their place in this movie. I remember the scene coming up, and I was just like, who are like? I didn't care at all personally about it. I don't disrespect the acting in there, but I just thought I was like, I could care less about these four. Like we talked about the Earth scene at the end, like where they go to save him. I like the idea of that, but I was like, I don't really care if any of these characters die.
I think it's cool that for such minor roles, all of them except for the blonde guy.
Yeah, no idea who that guy is.
Yeah,
I thought it was Jack Teller for a minute.
Yeah, he's in a big show that I used to watch. I can't think of what it is. But all of them except for him make it through a few movies, which I think is pretty cool. Like Civ has some key scenes in future movies, which is pretty cool. The girl, and it's just a smoke show. I am surprised that Thor was single because she is gorgeous and she's badass.
He's not interested in. He just wants to be the king.
Yeah, I guess so. So, strongest Avenger in this particular movie. I actually am gonna go with the bad guy. I love Loki in this. I actually love Loki through this whole series. What's his name? Tom
Hiddleston.
Hiddleston, yeah. I think he's a phenomenal actor. He's great in a lot of other movies as well. But in this, he's so deceptive. It's hard to know what he's doing, what he's thinking. Is he actually a bad guy? Like, does he have a good heart? Like, his mixed emotions in his heart, his, like, conflicted feelings are so apparent, and it's great because you don't know which way he's going to go in every scene. You really don't know. So that's why I'm going to give him strongest Avenger for this movie.
Cool. Yeah, I got mine now. So I'm gonna go with Odin, Anthony Hopkins.
I loved Odin,
and I completely blanked the first time on this, but I forgot he was in this movie, and like I love Anthony Hopkins in this movie. He's not in as much of it because he does have like the heart attack or go into that coma when Loki's kind of getting mad at him. But I think he's like the voice of reason a lot of times for this movie, where like every scene he was in, I was like captivated by it. Where I was hanging on to like every word, and like there's that the beginning scene where it's like young Loki and young Thor, and he's like, one of you guys are gonna take over, and obviously
and you're both
like
worthy kings.
Yeah, but like just the scene where he banishes him, where like Thor's yelling at him, and he has a line where he says like, a worthy king never invites war or something like that. There was like that great scene where he banishes right before he banishes Thor, where he says like, I was a fool for like thinking you were ready, and I was like, oh, it's such a good line where like.
You're right. If he had more screen time in this, he probably would have been my shirt.
Yeah. I think I think he was in enough of it, and I don't think enough people stood out. I love Chris Hemsworth, but like I thought this was probably his weakest Thor movie, which is the origin movie, so that's going to be expected. But like I didn't think that. I think in later movies he's awesome, but like I think in this movie he just played the arrogant character, which was his role. But I think Odin was for me the one that stood out the most, and I thought he was just always like bringing it back, and kind of everything was centered around him in a way. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah, I'll go with Chris Hemsworth. I'll just throw that in there. In comparison to other movies, which we supposedly haven't watched yet, hypothetically, he is the least charismatic in this one, but he still has probably a good amount of charisma out of anyone else in the movie, cracking a couple jokes. His character development is in full view, because you start off with arrogant Thor and you're like, all right, this guy's kind of a dick, he only cares about himself, he's looking out for himself, and then as the movie goes on, he develops a romantic relationship, and then his character kind of turns around to caring for other people. So you do see a good like character arc throughout the course of a story, and then he mixes in some funny moments, some serious moments. He does a little bit of everything. I'll give it to him. I think Loki and Anthony Hopkins, obviously as Odin, were really, really good as well. I'll go with Chris Hemsworth this time around and just give him the nod, because he did have easily the most amount of screen time.
Yeah.
Don't agree with you on that one, but that's okay.
That's
I
fine.
think, I think it's good. We all have different strongest avenger, and I think that have some from the hills diversity, but it's not an old wooden ship in this podcast.
Right.
Do you guys want to start off with Baby Arms? I think I'm still thinking on this one, so if somebody else wants to.
What's her name? Natalie Portman?
Yeah.
Is that her name?
Jane Foster.
Jane Foster in the movie. Yeah, I was looking for that. I liked her in the movie, but I thought she was the weakest, because she never sold me on really like being in love with Thor. I felt like it was kind of just part of the story. Like, it's like, all right, this has to happen, so that's what's gonna happen. I wasn't sold on it, and I didn't really feel that connection. I thought there was something there, but it was kind of, I thought she was just kind of lost, and this guy was her only cling to what she was working on after the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. took it from her. So she's like, oh, I gotta kind of stick with him because he's all I have left. So, well, she was the weakest, just because her character kind of played such a big part in being the changing factor in Thor's life to kind of make him realize, like, hey, like, there's people you can care about other than yourself.
Yeah.
But she didn't sell me on it, so I'll give her the Baby Arms.
No, I'm not surprised they eliminate her after a couple movies.
Yeah, it's a weird, we're not gonna jump ahead too far, but it's a weird relationship. There's a good scene where he says it was a mutual dumping, and I forget which movie that is. But yeah, it's weird. She's in some movies and not in some. Now she's supposed to get her own Thor movie, which is cool.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah, they're making a new Thor with Natalie Portman as female Thor, which is really cool. But then she's becoming Thor, so then it's that's weird. But that's something. We'll cross that bridge when we open the Bifrost.
So and I'll jump in. I don't want to take up too much time.
I'm still thinking.
You brought him up earlier, Kyle. Coulson pisses me off in this movie so much, and I don't want to say it's. We should probably look up his name, and I don't know why I can't remember it. But as the actor,
we'll edit in there.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it's necessarily acting, but the role sucks in this. And again, they insert Hawkeye into this.
Yeah.
And it's the similar way they insert Scarlet Joe as well. In that whole scene when Thor is trying to steal his hammer, and they're like, let's get some eyes up top. And Coulson's leading this about to be what you think is going to be this big battle scene. And Coulson and Hawkeye are going back and forth. And you see Hawkeye go to grab a gun, and he's like, no. Grabs his own arrow. It's
that was a quick shot where he's shows over, and then that's when they show Hawkeye where he's got his arrow loaded, and then he puts.
You want me to slow him down? It just I don't know. Coulson calling the shots right there was not his scene. That's not who he is. Kind of in Avengers, he has a scene similar to that, the first Avengers. That pisses me off. Where that's not your scene. You're not a field guy. You're not out there fighting. In this movie, he pissed me off. I hated him from, taking Jane's research, giving it back. There's so many parts of it I hated, and I hated that he never. And I know he tried to, and Thor flew away. He didn't try to build a connection or relationship with Thor like he does with Tony Stark and Iron Man. So I don't know. The Avengers Initiative we know is kind of if you look back from Avengers, we know this is them starting to like work it up. They talk about Iron Man 2. Well, this is a perfect person to recruit now, but it just I didn't love Coulson. Probably my least favorite.
That's agreeable.
I'm gonna agree actually with Vic here on the baby arms, because like Coulson. We talked about this when we watched the movie. Like, I hated Coulson in this movie. I think his name is like Gary something. I don't know. We can maybe look
look it up,
or we'll just edit it in there either way. But Coulson, to me, I love the Agent Coulson character, and like usually the actor is really good, and he didn't necessarily do a bad job here, but to me it felt very like off character for Coulson in this movie, because he's like easily duped, kind of like what I talked about earlier, where he's got Thor held captive, and like the guy from Chernobyl, which we still don't know his name.
It's never an easy name.
Sveg or something. Yeah. It's probably not Sveg, but
Clark Gregg is Phil Coulson's real name.
That's exactly the name I thought would be for that character. So I think Agent Coulson is really good in like all the other MCU movies, but for this one he really stood out for me as like being like duped. I feel like he was always a step behind, where like, I don't know if we talked about this earlier, but yeah, he takes Jane Foster's equipment, like, and Natalie Portman's like, you can't take that, I built that. Like, he's like, oh, I'm sure you can build it again. He's just like kind of a dick in this movie, and he's always behind. There's like a scene where he interrogates Thor, where he's like, oh, you must be military trained. He's like, where are you from? He's like, you from Brazil? You from this? And I'm like, dude, shouldn't you know this? And then like when Thor gets his power back, he comes back down and he's like, oh, we haven't been entirely honest with each other. And it's like, dude, shouldn't you know who Thor is? Like, if you're building this Avengers initiative, like, shouldn't you know, like, oh, we think this dude is Thor, we've seen sightings, or like,
at least have like,
they found his hammer, like,
exactly, and they didn't know what the hell the hammer was.
They should have had some inkling to that this guy wasn't mortal.
Yeah. The reason I like Coulson usually is because he's usually a step ahead, or he's usually like that witty, like, smart character. In this movie, I feel like he was always a step behind, or like making poor decisions. So I think that's more in like the directing or the script. But Coulson is my baby arms winner for sure this week, because I just didn't like him at all in this movie.
So this one here, I was going like 7.4. I think it was good. I think there was some strong scenes. I think there were some weak scenes. But for the most part, I haven't seen it since it came out in 2011, so 9 years later revisiting it, I think it held up really well. I also think I enjoyed a lot of the action. Some of the downfalls were, I think the sound effects were ridiculously loud, and then some of the dialogue was really soft. So when I was trying to watch it, I was getting a little frustrated. But still, for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I think the villain at the end could have been a lot greater. I thought the ending could have been a lot greater with Loki, like I said, falling into that black hole. Wasn't a huge fan of that, but it is what it is. But I enjoyed it for the most part for an origin story. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it answered a lot of questions, showed a good character arc, and I wouldn't call it great, but it was solid.
I'm going to put this one at like a 7-1. I think that this movie does, like Garrett said, it holds up more than I thought it would. But I found myself like kind of bored at the end, where like I didn't care at all about that scene at the end, where like it's just staged for Thor to be worthy again. And I do like that he sacrifices his life. He's like, look, take me. We all thought, I think, anonymously that, or unanimously, I should say, is it Steel? That big the enemy in this movie?
Yeah.
We thought that was cool,
Steel
but it
furnace.
kind of came out. I don't know if there's even a name for it. It just it was like Loki's henchman, where he just threw that thing out there. I think we all thought the effects were cool in that, but it felt like a weak villain overall. So like Thor sacrificing himself, I think was cool for him to be worthy, and that's when he gets powers back. But some of these scenes I just felt like I was like, okay, this is okay. This movie visually is okay. There's some really good scenes I like. Like I said, when Odin banishes him in the beginning, there was more humor in this movie than I remember. Like when he smashes the cup in the diner, and like him getting run over by the truck a couple times. Like I found myself laughing at a couple of scenes there, which I didn't remember this movie having a lot of comedy. Which obviously eventually we find the Thor movies. I think especially Ragnarok is like basically a comedy. But yeah, 7-1 I think is a fair score, but I wouldn't put it too high.
I rated this a little higher. I'm a 7.5. I think Iron Man 2 at like low 8s, like 8.1.
Every week we're just gonna be like, what did I score for the last movie?
Yeah, and I did it written down, but
I'll edit it in. It's okay.
yeah, overall, I like Thor. It was a good movie. I'll watch it again in a couple months, I'm sure, but it's not great. I know there's a lot of greatness ahead, so I don't want to go too high, but I don't want to disrespect it and put it too low because it deserves its respect. Overall, there's a lot of things I liked about
I
it.
think what we're going to do going forward is just an individual rankings. So I think we'll have Garrett's rankings, my rankings, Victor's rankings. So
Yeah.
I think that works better other than having overall rankings, because then we have to do a vote, and there's only 3 of us here, so that could get messier. Disagree on that.
So my personal rankings right now, we have Iron Man at the very top, and then we have Iron Man 2, and then we have Thor, and then whatever that movie is.
Okay.
So for me, the rankings, and personally, like, I'm ranking these individually, and then like a score is not necessarily going to equal a higher or lower ranking for me. I'm going to rank these movies on their own, and then like my
Where they
rankings,
slot in,
my
they
rankings
slot
will be
in.
different. So,
Yeah.
and we can all have different criteria for what our rankings be. For me, it's Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, then Thor, and then The Incredible Hulk, or the incredibly boring movie to watch.
Yeah.
All right, so we're on the same page.
So we have the
Yeah.
same rankings.
And I'll jump right in. So my rankings are the exact same as them so far. We have a lot of great movies coming up I'm excited for.
I don't want to say decent, but it's a fair movie, I think, across the board.
Yeah,
I don't think any of us hated it, but I also don't think any of us loved it. And I think it's weird rewatching these because we also know what's coming, so we know like, oh, this is good, but like, let's say, oh, Ragnarok does this better.
Yeah.
There's better things to come.
I think it does. Yeah, I think it lowers the score knowing what happens in the future, but it also boosts the score because you notice some things,
It's a product of its
some
time, too.
foreshadowing
Mm.
that you didn't, and so I think that kind of boosts the score sometimes, but also where characters don't live up to the hype that they create in other movies, it also lowers it. So it's a fair trade-off.
So we got Captain America next?
Captain
Captain
America
America.
next. Yeah, I think real quick, what
The
we also
first
have to
Avenger.
remember, the first Avenger. Yep. What we also have to remember, I think, is that think about when this came out in 2011, where at this point, now we have all the MCU movies. At this point, we had Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, and that was it for MCU movies.
Yeah.
That's all you had to
So
base
that's
it off.
so we didn't have like the End Games and the Infinity Wars and like and the Ragnaroks. Like all we had was 2 Iron Man movies and a Hulk movie, and I think from most people's perspective, the 2 Iron Man movies were pretty good, but the Hulk movie maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So this was the introduction of Thor, and I think we all agree like this is a pretty good origin story for Thor.
Oh,
So,
for
like
sure.
it could have been I think Hulk was probably a pretty bad origin, where like this I think is way better than that.
100%.
And then we have Cap's origin next week. And then we jump into Avengers after that, but we don't want to look too far ahead. But yeah, Captain America, the first Avenger, is next week. So,
Cool. I'm excited for it.
so I think that's just about everything there. So thank you guys again for joining us. Please go check out the other Reviewers Assemble
Gotta
videos
subscribe.
there.
Stop
Please
fucking
subscribe.
around.
Always subscribe. We
Um,
need support.
Yeah, please check out Hulk isn't a great movie, but I think we do a decent job at least with the review. So please go check that out. Iron Man
Great
2.
bloopers at the end of Iron Man 2. Make sure you check those out for sure.
Yep. Please subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more content coming, starting with Captain America next week. But until next time,
More content, more Sam Adams. Cheers, boys.
Hulk smash.
we still need an outro.